Life is a highway. I want to ride it one more time. And when I do, I want to ride it with Michael Miller, the publisher.
And Francis Reaves right here in Miami. Oh, my goodness.
I'm trying to become a singer.
Yeah. Well, I think you've already arrived. All right.
Yeah, the good news is I am a lawyer.
Yes, thank God. All right.
Exactly. Michael, how are you?
Good. I've been, the last month or so, it's been sort of a solemn move to get from inside to go outside and dealing with those emotions. All right. And I think lots of people are going through that.
I agree.
And since you are a lawyer, you also have a yourparents.com, and you writing a book.
I have written the book.
Oh, you've written the book?
I'm doing the book
2-minute
proposals.
Warning,
yeah.
Right? 2-minute warning. So one of the things that came up 14 days ago was a tragedy on Surfside. So here we are, and they're enjoying their lives, and in 5 minutes, it's gone.
Sound asleep.
Right? And so, we think that it's a 2-minute warning, all right? But we don't know there's a 2-minute warning bell.
No.
And such tragedy and such pain, that's over there, bigger pictures things. It happens every day that our lives are not to the extent that we thought they would be.
Right. Life is what happens when you're making other plans.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happened there. And of course, I'm the president of the board of our 12-story condo. And as luck would have it, we had our 40 year in 2019 and actually had prepared for it starting in 2014. Not because that was my predecessor, who was an engineer. He's now deceased. He was an engineer, an Annapolis Navy Academy grad. And thank God he was our president then, because, he just made sure every little thing was done, along with our general manager. I mean, Don was also very involved. However, it was so, for me, I wrote a letter. I had to write a letter to all our residents just to let them know where we were. And then the village of Key Biscayne says, okay, we're going to inspect every building.
When was this, back then?
No, just
now.
This past week. And guess what? They got it wrong. They got our building wrong. They got another building wrong.
What does that mean, they got it wrong?
Well, they had the wrong folio number. They told us we were not in compliance, and their folio number was wrong. And another building they had said wasn't in compliance. I have a client who lives there, and the client had been president of his board and was there. He was part of the certification process, and there it was, his certification. So now I'm like, okay, so everybody's at fault here. A, if you're not in compliance, and B, our village, the village of Key Biscayne, as we know, is a little bit more high income. Yet we pay these people, and the people we pay them at a higher rate.
Who are these people?
The zoning,
are you talking about
employees
of the city?
Yeah, employees of the village. Absolutely. And now, I'm going to give the manager a break here because he's only been here a month. But so this has, however, been going on for years, that they're really not paying attention to what they're doing. The fact that even 18 were not in compliance is an issue for the village. How dare you not be doing what you're supposed to be doing when we pay you extra money? I haven't written that letter yet. We're having an executive board meeting today, but it's sort of like, who can you trust? You sort of have to go back. A, you got to look in the mirror, and B, got to start living that life, Michael. You got to get outside.
And I think that's part of the big focus. A friend of mine called me and said, Michael, I got to get off the rock. I said, what do you mean? He said, Michael, I get off, I go back. I get off and go back.
Yeah, it's tough.
And so what he's doing, he is flying to a destination so he can not be here in the trap in his head that was here. He's going to a place to where he's going to be a little bit freer, and it'll be harder for him to be in the cave, right?
Uh-huh.
And we see that is so significant for us here in Miami, COVID for across the world, but specifically for us in Miami with the Surfside event.
Yeah.
Last week was a threat of a storm, all right?
Uh-huh.
Yesterday, the president of Haiti was assassinated.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
All right. terrible. And for us here in Miami, Haiti is part of our conversation.
It is.
Right? It's not like you're in Arkansas, right, where they go, "Where's that?" That it's an instrumental part. And in government here, Haitian is Creole is one of the languages that has to be
on the ballot.
On the ballot,
yeah.
because of our connection to the people of Haiti. By the way, we've had Haitian women on here before. They are so excited when they come here, and it's a whole different level. If you get a bunch of Anglo guys, it's like nothing, right? These ladies come in, they are dressed to the T, and they're really excited.
Like me?
Like you. So tell us about your dress.
It's my summer dress.
Okay.
Except I hadn't put it on for a while, and it's sort of one of the old-fashioned dresses. You know, they call them bodycons. It kind of hugs to the body a little bit. And so when I put it on, I went, have I gained weight? But I haven't, as it turns out, the good news. But, you know, it's just getting used to it again. Talking about getting out from under the rock, right? You know, whoa, clothes.
Yeah. So here we are, the middle of July 2021, right? We have the kids traffic is back to normal, right? As we all know, right? And right now, traffic for schools is during the regular school year is 10 to 15% of it is school.
Right.
So we know that come September,
it's coming back.
It's coming back, baby. All right. And as we see in the morning, the traffic that's there. We've also had our regular shows that was scheduled for 9 o'clock for the last 15 months. People are going, I got to leave a little bit early to get there nowadays.
It's true.
So lots of changes that are going on. So tell us about your book.
I'm pretty excited. I'm doing the book proposal right now. And as a consequence, because of a particular conversation I had with one of the agents who wanted to see it, my manuscript is finished, but she told me, she said, you know, there are plenty of books on aging. You have to differentiate yourself. So I went to Books and Books, Mitch's home, and
Mitch
Kaplan's home, and looked at all the books. And there really aren't that many books about living and having fun after the age of 60. Everything's about death and dying, dementia, how to be a caretaker, how to take care of yourself as you're being a caretaker. I mean, and can I just say, I don't understand why women buy those books, because it's what we do anyway. You know what I mean? Why am I out of gas? Because my husband drove the car last and forgot, you know. So here I am going down Dixie. And do you know, when you're headed south on Dixie, all the gas stations are on the left. I mean, I had no idea. I'm so lucky I made it here. And even when I was turning the corner, I'm like, okay, well, I can walk there now. So, but the book is, I'm excited to put it out into the world. You know what I'm saying? It's my next movement forward.
So people want to know, from the moment you said, I'm going to do it, right? Not getting to that point, but said, okay, I'm going to do it. How long ago was that to get you where you are today?
I started writing the book, I want to say June, July of 2019. And I disciplined myself, and this was from one of the workshops also at Mitch Kaplan's home, Books and Books, that you give yourself 2 or 3 hours, like because I work. So for me, it was on a Sunday, and I would just, every Sunday, that was my discipline, to go and write the book. And then, of course, COVID happened. So there were no distractions. So
when you would write, was it a time frame, or was it a paragraph or two, or a chapter or two? How did you process that?
Well, actually, it was a time frame, because once I had 45,000 words on page, then it was a question of organizing it, which was a little bit more difficult than I had imagined. And what you have to do is an outline of all your chapters. That really helps you sort of put it in order. And the beginning of my book is all the positive things we can do, you know, and I quote you verbatim. You know, the kids are out, the last dog died. And I say Michael Miller, so I'm going to.
Well, it's my pleasure.
So, but I mean, it's time to have fun. This is it.
Let me, on the book, when you would write, would you make sure that everything was spelled correctly as you were doing it, or would you just write even if you misspelt it and then go back and correct
That's it.
it?
If I was on a roll, nothing stopped me. And it's when you go back and read it again. I mean, I sometimes use swear words in there because I was just because you're emotionally invested.
And when you open your mind to that, there's a process of flowing between your subconscious mind and as you're sitting there and the brains are in your fingers and you're typing and you're communicating back and forth between your fingers and what's there. And it's okay to be swearing and doing all that because that's the flow. That's what's keeping this juice going, right?
Well, and the research I got to do, and now I understand why once you write a book, you're an expert, right? Because you do so much research. For instance, this shocked me. First, I was just writing about examples and great people and how they'd had failures, like Winston Churchill in World War I in Gallipoli, and then he came back and was prime minister for World War II, and then the change agent for the royal family.
Don't ever what? Remember what he said?
If there's a will, I want to be in it.
Okay. Spoke to an attorney, right? Specializing in senior events.
What was it he said?
Along the line, don't ever, 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 ever give up.
Oh.
It's not exact, but that's the essence.
Yeah, but and I also wrote about another man, Bill Miller, who's in the financial field. He had a huge 2/3 of his fund was lost in 2008. And when we had that big financial crisis, and he had beat the stock market for like 15 years before that. Well, guess what?
What?
He started all over again. And this is how much money he has now.
Yep.
He actually gave Johns Hopkins University philosophy department $75 million because he says it was his master's in philosophy that taught him the critical thinking that he needs. So he has $75 million to give away. I don't know how much that boy is worth, but I know what he can give away. But then, and this was what shocked me, our Abraham from the Old Testament and the New Testament is the father of everything. He is the father of the Old Testament. He connects the Jews to God. He's their connection as they're the chosen people. In Christianity, I grew up with a syllabus that talks about our father Abraham, the beginning. And then in Islam, he is the beginning of the prophets. He and Adam are the beginning of the prophets all the way to Muhammad, and is mentioned in 35 chapters of the Quran.
Okay, so I know that we both have ADD. So what's the connection between that and whatever we were talking about before?
Well, I mean,
what do you think, Howard? Wow, I've been on the run of roller coaster.
I know. But I was talking about writing the book and the things you learn.
Okay, yes. Okay.
But it begs the question, right? This has nothing to do with the book. This begs the question, why do the children of Abraham fight?
Why did they?
Why do they? I mean, remember, he is the father of Judaism, Christianity, and
well, you're a learned person at this point in your life, so what do you think?
Men.
The guy that wouldn't put gas in my car.
Yeah. I mean, what happens is when these things are put before you, it does sort of make you a little more existentialistic. Is that a word, I wonder? Could you look that up for us, Howard? Existentialist. Oh, existentialistic. Oh, there we go.
Wow, way to go, Howard.
Woo, Howard.
Right.
Thank God for learned producers.
Yeah. So here we are. Your book is written, right? Now, it's how many words, more or less?
I think it's going to end up at about 44,000 words.
And for the uninitiated, how many pages is that, more or less?
Double space, 12-point font, over 100.
Okay. And how?
Those are the big pages, 8 by 10.
So you started in 8 months before COVID, right? And there was a little warning before that. And during COVID, did you write? Were you still on that discipline to write?
I was. Sometimes I would cheat and work on a work day because I got so into the book. I really loved that process, actually.
That's neat to be able to do it, to set aside time and say, this is it. And there is that muscle memory and that brain memory.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to go over here. This is the day. Oh, I know I'm supposed to do something.
Right.
Now,
And I sit in a certain place
all right.
so that I'm there.
Since COVID, I haven't written very much. So I started writing the other day. It took me 30 minutes to write a cut line. That's how backed up this is, all right? Because in my having conversations is different than thinking about this, and you're by yourself, no dialogue back, and you're like this. And I was looking up every word, and finally I said, how did I used to do it? I wrote for decades.
Yeah.
Right? Which is just sit down and start writing.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I forgot her name. A teacher at Miami-Dade, she said, you're struggling with writing? I said, yes. I said, here's the problem. I sit down and I got this block and I ripped the paper out of the typewriter. That was a long time ago. Right? And she said something to me, and here it is 50 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, why don't you just sit down and start writing? And then if you have a block, just stop and start again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way that it is.
It is.
Right?
It is.
And so I know your first book has not been published yet, but will be. But tell us about the second one.
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think about what I want to write next. Some of it's going to depend on what the agents tell me about this particular book. But I think there's a lot in that book that can, be longer essays. One thing is our vocabulary, calling people over 60 or 65 from seniors to elders. As I state in the book, I think that's its own issue, because in all societies, the elders are your folks. They're the wise ones. In the United States, it's our culture.
And that term is a upgrading term.
It is an upgrading.
Yeah.
Seniors graduate.
Yes.
But
yes.
And we, the United States, have sort of put people over 65 aside instead of using their wit, their wisdom.
Did we get an answer on the second book? What the second book was going to be about? But
it's either that or my memoir.
Okay, so we didn't discuss that ahead of time. I didn't know that you were going to do that, but it's something. Do you feel compelled to do it? You wrote your first one. It's not published yet, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's almost there.
Yeah.
Right, and you're thinking about the second one.
I'm already thinking about the second one.
So let me ask, you still jog, run?
Yeah.
Did you ever run? I don't want to say competitively, but as a hobbyist in events?
Sure. No. I did all the events. I just recently, even last year, I did the what's it called, the Lighthouse Run.
So when you were and you'd have to sign up for that run, pay the money, you'd get a bib and a number. Great. So when you were in those signed up events, did you already know what the next one was going to be? Right.
Yeah.
And so it is.
Yeah.
Right. And they say in long distance runnings, they say the first one's by accident and the second one's on purpose.
Right.
Because you just don't know until you do it. And then that's where the real man, the real woman, the real person comes through, when you can do it the second time, knowing what was there and saying to yourself, that's okay, I can do that and do a little bit more.
Right.
So
it's funny.
Your new book is, when do you think you're going to
well, I'm going to give myself, it's an iffy thing, right? Because for the last almost 2 years, here I have been focused on writing this book so that I can be seen as an expert in my field, right? And so that I can talk about all these things that sort of that upset me about the way our elders are treated. But during that process, figuring out how much fun it is not to have the dog and the kids anymore.
And I'll finish up on my part, if you don't mind. So Aaron Guerrero, who does a lot of video work and a lot of digital work for us, he wrote a book, How to Eat Healthy Around Unhealthy People. And so he wrote a book, and then he wrote another one, How to Write a Book. He did. We have him up front.
Oh, that's
because
so
I think people said it. And so he wrote about his experience in doing that, all right? And that because, one, he wanted to save it. And two, people asked, well, how did you do that?
Right.
So an experience for somebody to put together a book, because lots of people don't know quite how to do it.
I didn't when I started.
But you created the content, which is pretty important. The rest of it, there are people that can help you with that. But the writing is a soulful thing, right? Those are your words, your thoughts that you were able to do that.
It's true.
All right. So, new book, maybe you'll start working on the next couple of months? This is July.
I know. Maybe by the end of the year, because my question for myself is, what am I going to do on Sundays afternoons now? You know, I mean,
you go over to the marina and sit underneath the umbrella.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's been a really interesting process. There are also some things going on in my life, and I really have to ask the people's permission before I start talking about it publicly. But I think that Parent Your Parents, you know, we're on Instagram, Facebook Live with Miami Community News, et cetera, et cetera. But I think I'm going to document a person going through the testing for where they are in their lives. This is an over 80 person. And
when you say the testing, what do you mean?
Well, they're going in for an assessment as to whether or not they can be part of a study for an Alzheimer's drug. Okay. So they are, again, they're in their 80s, and genetically, their family has had Alzheimer's. So this particular person is sort of, you know, going back and forth a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe we should document this.
You never know when you start documenting those things, where it might wind up.
Exactly. It's scary in a way.
Yeah, and it's like, and you know, if you're a collector or something, so you have one or two things, you can have it. Well, it looks nice. You have three, it gets a little more interesting. When you get 4 or 5, that stuff comes to you, and then when you have 20 of those, you're a collector, right? Yeah. And people will pay more attention to you, and a lot more than if you just had one. So as you're collecting that information, the world is going to open up, and somebody may come to you and say, tell my story, right? And you're a great writer, you're a great communicator, right? You know how to talk with people, right? You keep us laughing over here, and Howard is over there laughing like crazy as well, and having a good time. By the way, welcome back. Howard just got back in town.
Welcome back, Howard.
Yeah. And so here we are, halfway through
we're
whatever
past,
year it is, right?
2021.
And we're going to turn around come January and February, and we're going to go, that'll be the 2-year mark, right, of this tragedy that occurred across the country. So my question to you, Frances Reaves, what did you learn because of COVID?
Well, I'm really pretty resilient. I was never worried about getting COVID and dying. In other words, that wasn't my issue, simply because of my background. I was worried about not having enough clients. I was worried about my company sort of contracting a little bit. And so I had to work harder, and it worked. I mean, my company expanded. You know, I made the most money from Parent Your Parents that I've ever made during COVID, which just reminds you that one man's trash is another man's treasure, because there were people who, because of the kind of work they did, lost so much money because they couldn't sit down and write or didn't have a license to practice law. You know, they were the quote unquote essential workers. So I learned blessings and perhaps a little more humility. You can probably assess that better than me. Because I don't know how to explain how lucky I feel that no matter where I am or what I do, my brain still works. And that is important. And that law license goes with me. It's almost like being a manicurist. You know, once you know how to do nails, it doesn't matter where you go. You can always do nails. And that's a great thing about my law license. Am I going to be a Supreme Court justice? No, but that's not what I've aspired to. I'm doing what I aspire to. And the pandemic also taught me that move forward. If you see that path, you just do it. Now's the time. What's the worst thing that's going to happen?
One of the things that occurs that most people should remind themselves of, you usually don't need permission. You just go do that. We distributed newspapers in Miami-Dade County for over 50 years, I mean, personally, all right? We would just go, we would put them out wherever we wanted, all right? We'd put out stands, we'd go in the stores, and almost no one said no. Right? If I went in and asked everybody, could I leave this here? A lot would say no, tell me no after I put them in, all right? So that's one of the things that this pandemic has taught us. We wrote it, all right, as it was going on, all right?
Right.
One of the things that we learned, that newspapers in the 80s and the 90s were trying to follow a newspaper format on the internet. So they were trying to follow this old thing.
Yeah, the Baltimore Sun.
The internet companies, they didn't have to worry about it. They just created their own script.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm hearing from you. Hey, this is it. This is the new environment. What now?
What now? Yeah, no, it's true. But it does teach you humility. I mean, not so much because everything I did was perfect, or that I made some huge mistakes. That isn't it at all. But it's because, for instance, Japan just said no spectators at the Olympics. But Japan has done nothing to vaccinate their population. I mean, why are we able to do this without our shield? Because we've done a lot, and they aren't a third world country. They're a first world country. I mean, they tried to beat us in a world war. So, I mean, hello.
I have some old newspapers in the back. They didn't.
Yeah.
In case you guys didn't remember.
We don't have to learn that language or German. But so, I mean, something like that, it's like, whew, no wonder everyone wants to be an American.
So let's look at the first responders to COVID, the first responders that are over at Surfside, and all right. And yes, I feel terrible for their families, and my heart goes out to them. All right. And they have their own trauma to deal with, and communities helping them. We've been interviewing folks who are on the first responder side. This is a long time event that's occurring in their soul, right? And for the folks that were around Hurricane Andrew, which was pretty traumatic for a lot of people here, imagine that again, but with real, more up close, one at a time, 2 weeks straight, 12 hours a day, right? So my heart goes out to the firemen and the policemen and their families and their children for the effect it is going to have on them. And if people in the mental health business, please open your offices and help these folks that need to have that time to decompress. Right, our mayor's been doing a great job down there.
Hasn't she been fabulous?
Yes, her empathy, her understanding. She's a social worker by trade. All right, and by the things she's done, her empathy is really grand. And actually 2 months ago, people were complaining that she was too touchy-feely. Well, here's a great thing that she has done, all right, and keeping everybody informed. We have 2 minutes left. One of the things she did, and Francis Suarez, the mayor of Miami, wound up in Washington. Our Miami-Dade County Mayor, Daniela Levine-Cava, wound up in Washington.
Yeah.
And now she's on the international stage.
She is.
So, folks, watch out and see what may be coming down the road. All right, my hat's off to her. All right,
mine too.
And
you need another picture, because I saw the picture of you out there with her mask on. We have to go back to all those people that we took photos of with masks and redo them, because it's a new day.
Yes,
it's a new time.
And it is. Francis,
and it's over.
Okay. And speaking of over, I think we're about done. Do me a favor before you sign us off. Talk to some young lady out there, young lady in particular, about their future and about school or education or about what's going on.
Well, your future is
which camera?
Okay. Your future is unending. You have no idea what's coming before you. So here's what you do. You just take it one step at a time. And there will be failures. There's no doubt there's going to be failures. But you know what you do? The measure of a good woman is picking yourself up again and starting anew. And don't worry about it. It works. It works. And I'm here to tell you that because it's my life. So it's been great, Michael, being with you. As
Always a pleasure. And you always put a smile on our faces over here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Sign us off.
Oh, I'm so sorry. This is Frances Reaves, president of Parent Your Parents at parentyourparents.com. And this is Michael Miller, publisher of Miami Community News at miamicommunitynews.newspaper.com. And here are your next guests, right,
There they
Michael?
are. Columbus High School folks. I see them right over there.
Great. We all get to go sit in Michael's office.
Right.
We like it when he
say goodbye, Frances.
Bye.
See you guys. Howard, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us,
Howard,
folks.
thank